Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're joining from the States. It's so good to be here, to be with you all. It's a real joy for me to really be able to share with you some of the things I have learned over the past years. And also some of the things that indeed they are so close to my heart and that I have been contributing to. I still continue to advocate everywhere in our context, in our church context, but also in the Balkans in general, for a more freedom and for more equality among religious communities. I do believe that we all are to be treated equal the same by our respective governments, no matter where we are. So I'm going to share some of these insights. I'm then also going to give you an overview of situation with some of the countries in Eastern Europe, and also hopefully in the end also get some recommendations which I think, and as I said, they are so dear to me, so close to my heart, and I'd like to share them with you, which hopefully can be also challenging. If I don't answer all your questions, at least I'll make sure I'll leave lots of questions with you back. So if you don't get all the answers, at least you will get lots of questions from me for you to think of. So that's the aim here. Initially, I'd like to give you some background information about religious freedom in Eastern Europe. Now, for all of us who are above 40, we would certainly remember days when communism fell in Eastern Europe. And once upon a time, all of this area was known to be an area of communism. But you see, even with that, for many of us others who are younger, we still think of Eastern Europe just probably as sometimes, or once upon a time, it used to be communist, and no longer it is. Now it's a good place to go to, but somehow some of our behavior, some of our government behavior, some of our expectations as well as people of faith in this part of the world are so deeply rooted into our past. Very often we do think, of ourselves when we think of religious freedom. Oh well, the religious freedom is good now. We enjoy all the freedoms that we need. Whereas what we are actually saying is we are perfect what we used to be. Once upon a time, we would not be able to worship freely. Now we can. However, are we all treated equal the same? Oh well, then that's totally another question. But so you see, the political background in our area is also important for us to know that Eastern Europe as a bloc, when we think of Eastern Europe only as a former communist bloc, actually even communism here, it wasn't always the communism the same in all parts. Very often, I take an example of Yugoslavia and Albania sharing the border, but you had Yugoslavia as a more type of socialist communism, whereby people can have a job, people can own property, people can have land, and they can work the land. Whereas in Albania, everything belonged to the party, to the Communist Party, including the people themselves. So everybody is working for the Communist Party, and religion was totally banned by Albania, being the first atheistic state by constitution. So you see, in all of these parts, all across the Eastern Europe, communism itself also varied from place to place. Now, in here on the table onto your right screen, I've also given for you to see that actually, while in the West we mainly think as Protestantism and Catholicism as the two main dominant forces, in the Eastern Europe, it's actually the Orthodoxy that is the main religion. Very often, some people have described the Eastern Europe and also the Balkans in general as the Orthodox courtyard. Now, also, it's important for us to remember that in some of the Eastern European countries, Islam is also either predominant religion or even a major religion. So you see, these are all only some background information for us to know and to see about the Eastern Europe from a different perspective. And sometimes I think it's important for all of us to try to understand Eastern Europe context from these lenses as opposed to from our own lenses. Now, so much has been said over the last couple of days by respected speakers, who all of them presented their presentations. They just laid a solid foundation. So frankly, I will not need to go into all of these details, but I think it's down the line when how we understand the religious freedom is probably important for us to also see that this is a very diverse understanding, and it's not that all the people understand the religious freedom exactly the same, including then ourselves over here, who don't really understand it all the same. Now, the background understanding of the religious freedom does vary from place to place and does vary from culture to culture in Eastern Europe. Somewhere in other parts of the world, let's say, religious freedom is understood as so long as I have not been executed, or so long as other major religious mobs do not break into our church, do not set it ablaze, we are fine. In some other parts, in some other cultures and countries, the religious liberty is actually to not be restricted into what I say or into what I believe. In the US, for instance, it is protected by the Amendment 1. Whereas in France, I think, and in other parts of Europe too, it is also perceived as a freedom from religion. So the freedom of religion is also at the same time a freedom from religion. I looked at the dictionary and I just briefly for us to see, one of them describes religious freedom as the right to choose what religion to follow and to worship without interference. So religious freedom is certainly one of the most fundamental human rights, which ensures the ability of people to believe, worship, and follow their faiths without punishment from the government. And again, without a punishment from the government, sometimes from the Western perspective, it's almost out of any question. Why should it even be there? But in the Eastern context, very often not to be punished by the government and to freely go and gather in our church buildings is the best thing we can think of. Certainly it is a God-given, the right to worship, it is a God-given, but many times when you talk to some of the government leaders in Eastern Europe, one of their achievements of the democracy they will present to you is that the government is supplying all the religious rights for people to meet. And whereas actually the right to believe in God, the right to worship, the right to have faith is fundamental. And it is a gift, and it is a call from God. It is not a gift. It is not a gift from the government. The freedom of religion, you probably would know all of this. The freedom of religion is a principle that supports the freedom of an individual or community in public or private to manifest religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. It also includes the freedom to change one's religion, which again, the freedom to change one's religion in the Eastern context, very often it is understood as betraying your own first religion. And this comes because the religious identity and the national identity are so much combined, which we're going to see later on. Now, is the religious freedom at risk at all? I am totally thankful to the increased support and increased interests, particularly coming from the US and the UK governments when it comes to religious freedom. We you probably are aware that the United States government issues international religious freedom reports every year. And we are also grateful for the UK under the auspices of the former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, the issuance of a religious freedom report, which you heard it from Charlie on day one. He was directly involved into this. Here are just some of the statements for us to see. Christianity is the most persecuted religion. It is considered today, where also Christians were the most persecuted religion group in the world. Harold Sun says Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world. And the BBC, Christian persecution at near genocide level. The International Catholic Christians, the most persecuted religious group. Now, in the table in the map onto your right, you are going to see in here that actually in 20% of the countries there, you're going to see that a religion is a preferred religion. Now, this is not only in the eastern part, but certainly this is the further you go toward the east, the more you see that. The religious, a major religious group or a major religion, which we're going to see, they call it by constitution, either they call it a traditional religion, or they call it a important religion, or even in the case of Greece, the state religion, it is a favored religion. Now, that puts then the whole religious freedom into the question of equality, whereby sometimes Christians are actually being undermined by the other major Christian groups. I have to admit, collecting data for the religious freedom in the Eastern Europe is not an easy task to do at all. I think a lot of it is not documented. A lot of stuff that goes on, it is not documented. We are seeing more and more of that, more of these violation of religious rights being documented into the international reports, but that is far from being enough. And I think more and more of that should be done. Discrimination of Christians, as I said, by the majority religion group is certainly going on. In the former Yugoslav states, the evangelicals are marginalized. I have used some of these reports, which I have listed here, to be the ones who have helped and actually do help, I think, all of us to see or to identify the religious freedom in the Eastern Europe. In the next two slides, I have combined together country profiles, which to me is very, very important to see that legislation and practice, oftentimes they don't go hand to hand. There is one thing that says in the constitution or in the legislation in general, and yet there is totally another thing that goes on in the practice. And here probably just for us to get some of the common denominators and common practices in the Eastern Europe, I will just briefly walk you through some of these countries. In Albania, the Constitution of Albania provides freedom of religion, and the government respects this right in practice. There is no official religion, and all religions are equal. However, the predominant religious communities, Sunni Muslim, Bektashi, Orthodox, and Catholic, enjoy a greater degree of official recognition. Evangelicals have a signed agreement too, just like all other religions, with the government of Albania. However, they are still marginalized many times by the government of Albania in the public sphere and in the public discourse. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina provides the freedom of religion, thought and practice, prohibit religious discrimination, and allow registered religious organizations to operate freely. Religion and ethnicity are closely linked, however. Federation constitutes established Islam, Orthodoxy, Catholicism, and later also the Jewish community. Other religious groups, they have to register based on a certain number of people. In Belarus, the Constitution of Belarus provides a freedom of religion. However, the government restricts religious freedom in accordance with the provisions of 2002 law on religion and 2003 Concordat. Now, this is a pretty big phenomenon. The Concordat is a pretty big phenomenon in the Eastern Europe, and you're going to see that to be also the case in Serbia, to be also the case in Croatia, whereby in Croatia, by the way, for different reason. It's a concordat between Vatican and Croatia for the finance of Vatican toward Croatia. But in other countries where there is a concordat between the Orthodox Church and the government, it is done for the reasons whereby the Orthodox Church is given is put at a higher level. And there also the rights of other religious groups are defined in that concordat. In Bulgaria, the Constitution of Bulgaria provides the freedom of religion, and other laws and policies contributed to the generally free practice of religion. However, the Constitution designates Eastern Orthodox Christianity as the traditional religion, exempting it from having to register in court as required for all other religious groups. All other religious groups have to register to get the status defined in the court in Bulgaria, but this is certainly not the case with the Orthodox Church. In Croatia, I already mentioned, they have a concordat with Vatican, but it is done for the reason of the finance. The concordats and other government agreements with non-Catholic religions, communities allow state financing for some salaries and pensions. Your Evangelical Theological Seminary there, probably you know this, they have secured some state finances from state financing from this. I think the Czech Republic is, and I would say also the Poland, are certainly good examples of religious freedom. Articles 15 and 16 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of Religious Freedom, part of the constitution system of the Czech Republic, include following statements. The freedom of thought, conscience, and religious conviction is guaranteed. Everyone has the right to change her religion or faith, or to have no religious conviction. And everyone has the right to freely to manifest his religion or faith, either alone or in community with others in practice and public, through worship, teaching, practice, or observance. Other countries include Hungary, Kosovo. I'll mention Kosovo also for another reason. The constitution of this country provides the freedom of conscience and religion for all residents, including the right to change, express or not express religious belief, to practice or abstain from practicing religion, and to join or refuse join in religious communities. These rights, however, are subject to limitations for reason of public safety. Now, evangelicals have continually complained that actually their right in the public sphere are not respected. They are not treated equally the same in the public. And when it comes to issuing building permits for churches or even cemeteries, they continue not to be treated equal. Macedonia, the laws in North Macedonia prohibit religious discrimination and provide for equal rights for all citizens, regardless of religious belief. And people generally have the freedom to practice their religion without disruption. Orthodox Church, Islam, Catholic, Jewish, and the Methodist Church are recognized by the Constitution. Moldova, laws establish the freedom of religion and outlaw religious discrimination. It accorded some additional privileges over other religious organizations, and local governments sometimes pass further restrictions or refuse to enforce provisions established by higher levels of government. Poland, I think I have mentioned. I think it is it does provide religious freedom for all, and I think Poland is also a good example, in my opinion, also for the fact that it came out from communism during the time of transition. It certainly did go through a change whereby the Catholic Church did have the final say in most of the things in the society, and the Protestant groups were marginalized. by far, but still I think it does continue what Neil Pease has described Poland as Rome's most faithful daughter. In Serbia, obviously in Romania, religions can organize according to their own statutes. Constitution recognizes, however, the important role of the Orthodox Church. And whereas in practice, it is the Orthodox Church that very often does have a final say in many times for other religious groups. Now, very often in all of these things I have described, which probably I will say it now, you see very often one of the common denominators is, or one of the main questions very often is, why is this the case with the evangelicals? Because we're smaller? Probably so, but very often people have also said it's because we are unable to join forces together, and therefore we can very easily be marginalized. The laws of Serbia establish the freedom of religion, forbid the establishment of the state religion, and outlaw religious discrimination. While registration with the government is not necessary for religious groups to practice, the government confers contained privileges to religious groups. The government maintains, however, a two-tiered system in Serbia of registered groups, and it has split them between traditional and non-traditional religions, which frankly is a continuation also of former Yugoslav law, where you had, during the time of socialist communism in Serbia, you had, or in former Yugoslavia, you had the religion, and then you had what they call in their own language, Društvo građana, which is a collection of people. And I think then obviously Slovakia is an interesting case. So the laws in Slovakia guarantee the freedom of religion, belief, and criminalize the defamation of the discrimination against religious groups. Religious groups may register with the government in order to receive certain privileges, but the threshold of membership requires for new groups to register is prohibitively high. Ukraine is also another case. Now, because of the time, probably I'm sorry, I need to probably be a little bit brief with all of this, but you know, this will allow me at least to go until the end of the presentation. The transition from totalitarian regime into free market states was not an easy tradition in Eastern Europe as a whole. Countries more central, like Poland and like the Czech Republic, moved much quicker in changing the legislation than those in Southern Europe, like former Yugoslav countries, which engaged into a conflict. Obviously, one of the first things that did change, I must admit, after the fall of communism, is most of these countries, they were seeking to establish a constitution and legislation that is democratic, which does provide a religious freedom. There is no official dominant religion for the entire Eastern Europe. It is not, there isn't, as I said, there isn't like one religion for all, or there isn't also one Christianity for all, indeed. But also we have to understand, as I said in the beginning, there is Orthodoxy as a main religious force, if you like, and there is also Catholic churches, but there is also Islam, which is either predominant religion in cases like Albania, Kosovo, and Bosnia, but also it can have also very large, can be a big majority, a big minority also in other countries. There is a strive, obviously, for a separation between church and state in all of these countries. But I think the process for what we would expect, or what in the West would be expected to be a clear separation of church and state, that is continuing to go with very slow steps. The Pew Research has discovered in one of their latest reports that actually there is a growth among the Orthodox countries, what they call Orthodox countries, which, you know, by constitution, none of them are really Orthodox countries, other than Greece having Orthodoxy as the state religion. But still, the Orthodox Church either is a dominant, or it has a big say. So there is an increase into 70% of nationalism, if you like, among the Orthodoxy in some of these countries. And there is also a little bit of growth among the Catholic churches as well, into 57%. In here, unfortunately, Islam has also not been looked at, which is also at a big rise, particularly in some of the countries in the Balkans, but also in other parts where they are living. In all of the reports that you see, or that we saw in the country profiles which I assembled together, I think there are some of the common grounds, if you like, or all of them really have a couple of common denominators. Certainly, as I said, all of these countries have received a big political aid and also legislative aid, but also aid in other spheres of life as well, from the Western part of the world, which has led toward the religious freedom. Therefore, the religious freedom is nothing of where it used to be. However, religious freedom has made a huge progress since after the fall of communism. In most of East European countries, there is no state of religion. There is no state religion. And in here on to your right, you will be able to see the map, which again comes from Pew Research Center. And there in the survey they have conducted, they have found that in Greece and in Armenia, there is a state religion. Greece certainly does have a state religion by their own constitution. There are then into preferred or favored religion. And into preferred or favored religion, you will see more and more, or being really a kind of dominant in some of the East European countries. Although there is no state religion, they have a concordant with the major religion. And by the concordant with the major religion is where the favoritism toward the major religion is being made. Very often that is done at the expense of minor religions. Evangelicals are marginalized in most of these countries. Their strive is for equality in the public sphere. There is a decline of interest, however, which is very worrying, for the freedom of religion among the pastors. More and more you talk to them, as I said, usually their response is, we are enjoying all the freedom, but frankly, what we mean is we are nothing where we used to be. I have made a couple of recommendations, which, as I said, come from my heart, and here I'd like to leave it with you. Hopefully, this will give you all and give us all some form of stirring inside, that we do think more and more apologetically, and that we do strive for our own rights. Again, yes, truthfully, we are enjoying the freedom. However, some of legislation, some of the clauses, some of the provisions that put us into second category is not a guarantee that in the future, near future or far future, that can turn us into second-class citizens and leading toward us not enjoying our own rights anymore. I think at the EEA and the WEA levels, there is an increased focus on religious freedoms, which is a good thing. However, there needs to be a deliberate connection between EEA and National Evangelical Alliance, whereby National Evangelical Alliance are always encouraged stronger and stronger that they create some forms of either commissions or groups of people who are interested into this religious freedom. How can that be done? I think, you see, in our Evangelical Alliance, for the years I have led it, we have produced our own religious freedom reports every single year. And it's not a massive religious freedom report. It's not that it covers all spheres of our society. They are particular to our own community. If there are cases where our churches have been marginalized or not issued a building permit, we would document it in the report and we would share it with the government and with the international community and with everybody else. I believe every National Evangelical Alliance should produce a annual freedom report. National Evangelical Alliance should also, at their level, should educate churches about their own religious rights. And also, National Evangelical Alliances need to invest more into the apologetics. This is as a kind of recommendation, which I believe it's very, very fundamental, and I think it can lead toward us or our rights being more respected.